Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is our June council meeting. We have a few new people in the room today, so we are going to do introductions. We'll go around and have Eric on Zoom, if you could call on the council members to introduce themselves, and then we're going to go in person and we'll introduce all the council members that are here. And then we have a new team member that we are going to introduce. Jill, would you go to the next slide? Okay. But first, Charlotte, would you mind kicking us off with a land acknowledgement? It's up to you. You're welcome to come up here. You can also do it there.
Just press the, yeah. Great.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. In our language, we say ha'o, you. Other land acknowledgement tribes that are affiliated with these lands, they say Manahu. And Inanane, I'm Charlotte Lang from the Mono Lake Quizotica tribe. And these are our traditional lands, and we welcome to share, and everybody online as well as here. And I wish everybody safe travels. Get home safely to your loved ones. It's 4th of July is coming. I saw all the signs up everywhere here, and they have big doings here in Mammoth Lakes. But welcome to our beautiful country. We love to share. And we love to collaborate, and let's do some good work today. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte. And then, Eric, I'm going to hand it off to you. Would you mind calling on the council members to introduce themselves online?
Yes. Karen Dickerson. Karen?
Yes, I'm Karen Dickerson, and I'm from Amador County. I represent Amador College Connect, which is a 501c3 foundation, and we provide online classes to our community, and we provide a lot of free services to help support students. Thank you.
Barbara.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Barbara Hayes. I'm the Chief Economic Development Officer at RCRC, Rural County Representatives of California. And in the capacity for California Jobs First, I serve as your non-voting chair.
Thank you. Dave Taney.
All right, I just unmuted myself. Hi, I'm Dave Taney, and I'm the Executive Director at Motherlode Job Training, and we provide workforce development services to 4 of the 7 counties in this group, in this region, Amador, Calaveras, Tuolumne, and Mariposa counties. And then I'm also the Executive Director for the EDA recognized Central Sierra Economic Development District, and we represent the 4 counties I just mentioned, plus Alpine County as well. So happy to be here, and sorry I couldn't make it over the hill, but we have a couple of our staff there today.
Gabe Edwards.
Gabe Edwards, former chair of the Chamber of Commerce of Mariposa County and the founder of the Mariposa County Chamber Educational Bridge Foundation. Quite a few of you have had phone calls from me and long conversations, and I look forward to continuing to partner with a few of you, including Amador College Connect and Columbia College. I appreciate your time.
Zelda. Griselda, can you hear us?
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were calling me. Griselda Ortiz, I'm the Equity and Diversity Coordinator for Inyo County, and I'm happy to be here.
Jane.
Hi, Jane Freeman. I work for the California Tahoe Conservancy based in Lake Tahoe, but I am a resident of Alpine County and I'm representing Alpine on the Governing Council.
Kathy.
Good morning, everybody. Kathy Galino, Calaveras County Economic and Community Development Director, representing Calaveras County.
Oh,
Sorry about that, everyone. Good morning. I'm Mo Frank. I work for Tuolumne County, and I'm very glad to be participating with everyone and think that we have some really unique opportunities here. So I'm glad to be part of the team. Thank you.
should be everyone on the call.
Why don't we start with Egon well, let's start with Kara. You want to go ahead? Also, Eric, can you let me know just how many people are in the virtual? 29. Okay,
Got
great.
about 25
Okay, great.
besides staff.
Yes. Okay, so that was Kara Bechtel, who is the West Side Navigator, who just spoke. So as a reminder, you have to use the mic when you're speaking.
Hi, good morning. Egon Terplin. I'm providing strategy support to this project. Good to be here.
Hello, I'm Craig Case, Executive Director at Chips Forestry.
Good morning, Alex Bloom, Economic Development Manager for Motherlode Job Training and the Central Sierra Economic Development District.
Good morning, James Hansen, Business Services Manager, Motherlode Job Training, and working on the California Jobs First project with the SBC team.
Good morning, Elaine Kabala, Eastern Sierra Council of Governments, and we are the side partner supporting Sierra Business Council.
Good morning, I'm Emily Graham. I am representing Columbia College and the Sierra K-16 Collaborative. I'm the director for that program, standing in for Lena Tran and Brandon Price today.
Hi, my name is Mary Watts. I serve as the Regional Director of Employer Engagement, and I support the Motherlode, Merced County, Stanislaus County, and San Joaquin County. So I work for the Central Valley Motherlode Regional Consortium, which goes from Bakersfield to Stockton.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Will Fassett. I'm the Community Design and Development Planner for Mariposa County. Excited to be here.
Megan McCammon, Deputy CAO, Inyo County.
Charlotte Lang, Mono Lake Quisitica Tribe. Glad to be here.
Hello, everyone. Angelica Mora, CEO of the Lone Pine Chamber of Commerce, representing Inyo County.
Good morning. My name is John Wentworth. I'm with the Mammoth Lakes Trails and Public Access Foundation, and I also serve with the Town Council of the Town of Mammoth Lakes.
Manahu, everyone. My name is Travis Nabahi. I just came on board a little more than 2 weeks ago with SBC, and I'm part of the SBC team. My role and capacity is the tribal navigator, which ultimately is to engage and outreach and facilitate with tribes, tribal organizations, and tribal communities. I also want to state too that on the flip side, as other organizations, government, municipalities, stakeholders, that if there's a way I could be a resource as well in terms of, if you had a pressing questions about certain tribal aspects or as it relates to tribal law or anything, I could also be a resource, and it's my pleasure to be here. I'll pass it on to the next person. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Linda Salcido, and I'm a Mono County Supervisor, and I'm representing this morning the regular governing board primary member and secondary member who couldn't be here. So I'm representing everybody from Mono County. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Stan Dodson with the Central Sierra Environmental Resource Center, and I'm a member of the Project Identification Subcommittee representing Tuolumne County.
So this microphone. My name is Magnolia Barra. When I get in the camera, right there. I'm the Eastside Project Navigator for Sierra Jobs First.
And hopefully everyone knows who I am, but just in case we have some new people, my name is Erica Harvey. I am the program director for the Eastern Sierra California Jobs First at Sierra Business Council. And then I'll introduce myself. Okay. All right, great. So we're going to have a couple updates before we get moving, but the bulk of today is going to be focused on discussion. Can we go next slide, please? Excellent. So we've got just a couple program updates, and then we're going to do a strategic planning work session. And then we're going to talk about some next steps that are coming in the Catalyst phase and our Sierra Jobs First collaborative. And then for the people in person, we have the Taco Latin Market food truck that will be here at noon. So we get tacos. Next slide, please. One more. Excellent. Okay, so we are still in the planning phase. We've got about 2.5 months left before we move into the Catalyst program. So we have, as most of you know, we completed back in December the baseline research and data report that was submitted. For the last 6 months, we've been working on a 7-county wide regional strategic plan. That is due to the state as a deliverable in August, and then we will be, we're in transition now, but we'll really be in transition in the next couple months into the Catalyst program. So if anyone had not heard, we did receive our contract. Woo! It was on time. And so we are ready to roll right into the next phase. Next slide, please. So we do have some calendar updates. Don't panic, we will send this out, so you will get an email with all of these dates. But just as a heads up, before you get that email, so in July, our team is really focused on the strategic plan, the deliverable and the public review, implementing all of that public comment. So we are only having office hours in July, and that office hours is meant for people to show up and ask questions on any of the strategies or the background process, all of that. That would be the time to show up, in addition to email us and ask questions. In August, we are providing, as we phase into Catalyst, we have some Catalyst project technical assistance workshops that we're planning, so we'll talk more about that later. And then our only collaborative meeting will be for August is the council meeting, and that will be virtual. So we are voting online just to keep it streamlined on that approval of the strategic plan moving forward. We will have tribal subcommittees on July and August. That's not on the list, but it is on there. September and October is the RFP process for the Catalyst projects. So we're only doing office hours. So there's no subcommittee meetings, there's no council meetings, and those office hours will be focused on any Catalyst project related questions. When that closes, the plan in November, the only subcommittee that will convene is the Project ID subcommittee, and they'll get their schedule. So that is being moved to earlier in the month because we have to do some sorting and weighting of those projects to make recommendations to the council. And then the council meeting is going to be in person in Sonora. We moved it, so it's going to be November 22nd, which is the Friday before Thanksgiving. And that is going to be a pitch session. So one of the things that was requested by many of our collaborative members is that there was some sort of pre-pitch presentation, the need to know information before the council votes on projects. So that is what this meeting is designed around. So the projects that are that will be put forth to be voted on, they will receive that information, and then they will put together like a 15 minute presentation on the need to know of that project. And then in December, it's going to be a virtual council meeting, and we are voting on Catalyst projects. So this is going to be a very fast summer, fall, because we want to get those contracts. We want everyone in contract in January. So that way, when we come back from the holidays, we're going to roll right into that implementation. So hopefully we're taking some meetings off your calendar, making it a little lighter, but then also we are really moving toward the fun part. We get to work on projects now. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to talk about this, but I'm going to do it at the end. So just hold any Catalyst-related, project-related questions till we get to that point. Next slide, please. Okay, and then I'm going to hand it over to our strategic planning partner, Shauna.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shauna Doherty with Agnew Beck, and we have been working with the SBC team and contractors since February. Met many of you at the April session in Tahoe. Nice to see your faces again. This is a moment of celebration. Yes, we have a lot of work to do, but this is a moment of celebration. We have a packet of draft strategies. Linda said I could borrow hers. Last Friday, we published this draft strategy packet, which is absolutely been crafted by all of the voices that have been participating in this process. All of you remember we had 100 people in April in a room writing furiously on poster papers. And we've been taking that initial base of ideas and refining it through a series of conversations out in the community with industry experts, re-looking at the data, getting additional data, re-looking at regional documents and reports, and refining. We have more refining to do, but this is a point in time where we can pause and celebrate. So a little bit about where we're at in the process related to the specific deliverables. What I just showed you is what we are calling the draft strategy packet. This is essentially chapter 3 of the whole enchilada. The entire strategic plan is going to be coming out on July 25th. I remember standing before you at the meeting in April, the Governing Council meeting, and saying, we hope it'll be around 25 pages. What I put there is definitely not going to be 25 pages. And the reason is the audience focus. And I wanted to speak a little bit about that because the next draft that you're going to see does two things. One is it's a tool for our region to drive our priorities and our strategies. That's the number one. Number two is it is going to meet the state requirements as far as the information that they need, because what they're doing is taking the strategic plans from the 13 regions in the state and rolling those up to a statewide California Jobs First plan. And so it's important that that we're following a template for the state. But I just wanted to get you ready that is going to, each of those documents is going to have, right now we're in the review process, which is 2 weeks for the strategy packet. The comment period closes July 8th. We've had 4 comments so far. So part of my goal today is to get you into the document, familiar with the information, and then hopefully that will be a very fun 4th of July week activity. We've made it, as I showed you, we built the strategy document in a PowerPoint format to make it much easier for people to read through it. So it shouldn't take a huge amount of time. And then on this Sierra Jobs First website, there's a link for where to provide your comments. It's a total of 4 weeks of public comments, and I'll show you the details of the schedule, and that's all on the website as well. Next slide. Just as a reminder, what is the purpose of this document? Yes, there's a requirement, a deliverable to the state. We all understand that. But for our collaborative and our work and your role as a governing council, what is the purpose of this document? I really like to use the word tool. It is not an end. It's just a roadmap for defining our priorities for the region. It's a tool. We're going to continue as we learn more and we build partnerships and we understand the data more to refine this. And at the moment that we turn into the state, that is just a moment in time of where we're at in the process. So it also is an opportunity for us. We know that the Sierra Jobs First funding is not the golden ticket to pay for everything that we want. And if you look at that sheet of paper that I handed out, and for those of you, when we look at the 42 strategies that we have right now, there's not enough money in the Sierra Jobs First buckets to pay for all of that. So we're going to need to start looking at where our strategy align with other funders and having those conversations. It's also to what I think you all understand this because we've been speaking to this, but really the order of doing the data analysis. So we did. Thanks. So we started with the data, right? So we did the data. This is an understanding of community opinion and the data of the region. Is it perfect? No, but it gives us a snapshot of where the region is today, the 7 counties. And then we moved into crafting our strategies. We're going to build on these 2 documents to create our next roadmap, which is going to be our strategic plan. And that is going to be informing the catalyst. I'm sure there will be some kind of question in the application process of how this proposed project moves the strategy forward in the strategic plan. So there's a relationship there. Next slide. Just a few reminders. There's 42 strategies right now in the document, and there's many tactics that hopefully look familiar to you because you saw them at one of the community meetings you went to. It's one of the ideas that you had from the April meeting. What we need to check, and as the governing council especially, is do we have the capacity? Are these the right strategies to move forward? And what are our top priorities instead of just moving the 42 forward? Is that part of what we're going to do today is some conversation about prioritization, because 42 is a starting place, but probably all strategies are not going to move forward. Go to the next slide. So I want to pause for a minute and talk a little bit about the framework. So in front of you, and then Jill, if you could send the handout as a link to all of our online participants, that would be great. So you've all seen different iterations of this. We're now using this graphic, but I just wanted to walk through it with you. So this is something we've been talking about since I came on in February, which is defining our vision. The mission statements, the 3 are very much aligned with the state. So climate forward, equitable, quality jobs. And so they're our own. We also added another one, which is about our youth and having an economy that maintains and attracts our youth to come back here. So everything is moving towards the mission and the vision, and then we have our 4 goals. And then really where we focused a lot is these strategy areas. So there's 11 strategy areas. I think many of you are familiar with what we have the 5 that are industry sector strategy areas, and then we have 6 now that are our core issues that we've all talked about. We're kind of calling our foundational elements. Go to the next slide. So the packet contains, like I said, 42 strategies, and I wanted to clarify sort of where are these strategies coming from. I think many of you are part of this. I've went through this. We're looking at data and input are critical. This is truly a community-led process. We work together to co-create these strategies and refine them. We had industry sector meetings. Steve Frisch this week was presenting to local government. There's a lot of one-on-one conversations. And then we're refining those strategies over time. And then we have these 2 public comment periods. And then we move it to you all approving it and moving it to the state. Next slide. I wanted to draw your attention to, at the last meeting, we had a conversation around how are you folding in, how are we simultaneously having 11 community-based organization meetings and refining the strategies? How is that possible? They're both happening simultaneously at the same time. I wanted to assure you that this team, this amazing team of navigators and staff that's out in the field having the conversations is putting the feedback into a spreadsheet that the strategy team that's working on refining the strategies looks at every time there's a meeting. And so as we're refining strategies and looking for consistency and clarity, we're constantly looking at the feedback that came in throughout that entire 2-month period through the conversations and the meetings. And I just wanted to assure you that it was a tall order, but because we worked together to make sure that those notes went straight into a spreadsheet and we were looking at those as we were refining, that happened. And I wanted to draw your attention. Bill can put this in the chat as well. This was sent out to all of you along with the packet. So this is a complimentary packet of the key summary ideas that came out of the 11 CBO, the community-based organization meetings, just some high-level themes, because we really wanted to highlight that the conversations that are happening out in your communities are being used to inform these strategies. And so we just wanted to have a pull-out document to demonstrate and show some of the great photos of the meetings and some of the key themes from those 11 meetings. So that is, I have examples here. It's on the website. Jill will be sending that out again this week with the draft strategy packet. Next slide. Okay, so before we go into the small group work sessions, because what we really want to do today is get you're going to go in, hopefully, and read the document and provide comments on the whole thing combined, high level, or pick a few of the strategies that you have the most opinions about and focus on providing comments on that. But what we wanted to do today is really stay at a very high level and think about what, if we look across at these 42 strategies in these 11 areas, what are the top things that we need to move forward to unlock the potential for economic prosperity in the region? You all live this, you work in this, you know it. What are those things that you just look at these 42 and say, there's nothing we can do until we solve for this? And what the prompt we're going to ask you is, you have an hour with the governor's team. So Sierra Jobs First has an hour with the governor's team. What are the 5 things that we want to move forward and draw their attention to that we feel is the most critical to unlock the potential in the region? What is like those foundational issues that if we don't get some help from the state, that maybe it's going to be very challenging for us to move forward on these other strategies. And so as much as we're going to want to get into the weeds today, what I'm going to ask this group to do today is just like really high level, what are those top 5 things? And then we'll include that in the strategic plan as well. If it's not on there, if there's something that you think is just like a critical thing that has to be solved for, you can also add that. So what I wanted to do before we get into the small groups is just do, Egon, I'm probably gonna have you come up and help, and probably Erica, is I wanted to have you all take a look. So the handout we're gonna use today for the conversation is we took the full strategy document and we turned it into one sheet. So this is it doesn't include the tactics and the outcomes, but this is the 42 strategies in the 11 areas. And what we wanted to do for those who are online and those are in the room is have you just give you some personal time to just take a look at that. And then what I would like you to do before we get into the small groups is just ask if you have any clarifying questions. We are very, very intimate with these strategies, as well as the team here. So if these are clarifying questions so that when you go into your small group, you can look at these and answer the question. So we just like to give you guys about 5 or 10 minutes to review this. And the online group, you all hopefully have a link to it and you can just look at it. And then just circle things that you have a question around. And for those of you who are online, you might not want to look at this screenshot. You might want to click on the link that Jill sent and just look at it on your own screen.
Hi there. I know that some folks on Zoom are concerned that they lost audio. We're just reading right now. No one's talking, so you're good. But Shauna will pick it back up here when folks are done reading this period.
Okay, we're going to wrap up in about a minute here. Okay, so to clarify, in the next 10 minutes before we move into the small groups and have the discussion, are there any strategies that are just absolutely not clear to you? You need a little bit more explanation before we go into that. How about we start with online? And I can see the chat, so if you put it into the chat, I can see the chat. If you have a question about a particular, you just need some clarification, like what does that mean? Yeah, so Linda, if you could use the microphone.
Thank you. On one of the foundational elements of land use and tenure,
Mhm.
first box there, with strengthen regional partnerships, et cetera. Could you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, so the question is, what does the, under land, the foundational element, land use and tenure, there's a strategy that says strengthen regional partnerships with local governments, large land management organizations, and major area employers to co-develop strategic plans addressing mutual infrastructure needs and capacity gaps. So just clarification on boiling it down to what that means. You want to speak to that? Elaine, did you want to?
Yeah, would you have your microphone?
Yep.
Hi, thank you. I knew the minute that I went to go get a snack, I was going to be asked to speak. So what that refers to is within our 7-county region, a very large percentage of the land is managed by federal agencies, or on the east side of the Sierra, we also deal with the city of Los Angeles. And because of those land tenure issues, we have pretty limited agency sometimes in advancing some of our community and economic development goals. So what that is referring to is strengthening the partnerships that we have with those agencies to be able to make sure that their mandates and their budgets and the goals that we're trying to accomplish and some of the constraints we have in our area, that we can find opportunities to collaborate towards advancing some of those mutual goals. And so that could include things like identifying opportunities to address workforce housing, looking at things like land exchanges or land divestitures that are mutually beneficial. And then I think there's also probably a relationship looking at some of the target industry strategies as well, such as sustainable recreation and natural and working lands. Hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. I will say that when you read the strategy packet, there's a lot more detail in the tactics to explain some of these things. And some of these are very much relevant to the east side and not so much to the west side. And we're going to indicate that in the final strategic plan. And that is a good reason for you all to go into the document and provide some comments. If we're missing information that is relevant more to the west side, please make sure to make those comments. Another question, clarifying question? Everyone understands every single strategy. We worked very hard. We took everyone's feedback and then we tried to distill it down to understandable language. But we wanted to just ask. And also we're ahead of, this is a small group. So I would invite you all, even though we're all sitting around, it seems very formal and we have 25 people virtually, we can open up if you have general questions. Are you tracking to the way that the information is organized with the foundational elements and the industry sector? We just want to make sure it's easy for you to access so that you can go in there and spend some time with this information today. So any sort of overarching thing that's just still a puzzle, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Any question is a good question. Yes, so, John Wentworth.
Thank you.
Do you mind using the mic when used? Thank you.
So when we get, this is in both sides of the ledger, but the interdependence of land tenure, land management, the various activities that take place on these things. Is there an opportunity when opportunities get identified to maybe reorder where the strategies are or how they intersect and how they talk with each other to get to a more efficient way to implement projects going forward?
Yes, it's a great question. So there's a lot of redundancy across, there's through lines that go across all 11 strategy areas, and then there's some redundancy of actions in one strategy area to the next. And the question is, are we just going to turn in a plan that's just flat and shows all the information? Are we going to start to show the relationship between these things? Yeah, the answer is yes. We have a whole nother graphic that is coming to you in the next version that shows the interrelationship. But first we wanted to make sure that our collaborative was clear on sort of the base and seeing their ideas in there. But that's part of today is, that's great. These are a lot of strategies, but what are those top 5 things and start to move which will help us to go back and look at, like, based on those top priorities that came out of the conversation, how do we start to weave those in and make it more clear?
So I can think of just as an example, from the perspective of the state.
Yes.
It would be very helpful if the state of California perhaps has agreements with the federal government that can save, like for downstream beneficiaries of water, natural resource, and all the rest of it. This is in the larger interest of the state of California. So like in the shared stewardship agreement between the state that's being used for the fire stuff, if there's an agreement between the state and the feds that we can all tier from, so we're not making individual agreements, one-offs all over the place, that there could be an opportunity to do something like that that's in high-level overreaching authority from the state that can be implemented.
Right, that's exactly what today's conversation around. I will say that as far as setting expectations, we're turning this around pretty quickly to the state, and we'll get that box checked, and we'll continue this conversation. But yes, we do see that there's relationships that need to be illustrated.
Okay, guys, just a quick follow-up, John, too. Is that missing, though? Do you think that concept that you just articulated is missing?
Yes.
And if so, we shouldn't, if it's something that people see as beneficial. I understand the implication of what you're getting at, but is that might be something that could, like, some of this could be rewording to elevate that idea of the state taking leadership on a set of actions or advocating for that. It could be a tactic underneath a broader concept, but it just, I understand the words you're getting at, but you're saying you don't see it living on this document.
I see a lot of one-offs, a lot of capacity going to a lot of one-off agreements that suck an enormous amount of time and effort and energy. And if maybe there's a way to do something that's higher level, it's like an umbrella, that might make these.
So in the breakouts, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about, is sort of what are those 5 big things that we want to move into the umbrella. So yes.
Is there anyone from the Forest Service participating in this program at this point?
Yes. So I'm going to let our navigator speak to we have a working lands work group, and also there's an existing, Kara, do you want to take that? But you have to come up to the mic.
Also, as she makes her way up, Shauna, there's 2 questions in the chat here.
Yeah, do you want to do that?
No, you can answer that.
Okay. Yes, we have Beth Martinez from the Stanislaus National Forest, who has been working alongside of us in Motherlode. And then she has also reached out to Inyo National Forest as well. So waiting for an update on who on that end can join us as well.
Yes, so there's at least 2 other forests that are part of our region with El Dorado and Sierra, right? So
and the Humboldt-Tioyabee.
Yeah, and the Humboldt-Tioyabee. And my other question is there been, have you been reaching out to the region as well? And do we have a contact in the region, especially for the sustainable recreation sector? And
Yes.
Region 5 for the Forest Service, which is basically all of the forests in California.
Yeah, totally. Some of that I'm going to look to John, just because, in the ESSRP model, they have a lot of established partnerships. So in the recent Sustainable Rec and Tourism workshop that we held, we had a lot of those people that were at that workshop providing feedback on those strategies. Was it 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a week. And also, Indian National Forest leadership wanted to be here today. Leslie Ann's traveling. Adam Barnett, who's the recreation staff officer, couldn't make it, but I think we can't do anything without him, so we're making sure that, at least on this side, they know what the hell's happening. ESSRP, if you come on Monday, we'll pat some of this around.
Yeah, so, and I'm going to read the questions in the chat, but I want to talk a little bit about the structure of this Sierra Jobs First Collaborative. We're barely 2 years old, and we did our best at organizing a structure for this first phase of planning work. Moving forward, there is going to be staff that is going to support the industry sectors that the strategies are moving forward in, and that person's job would be to really, there was one-off conversation with sustainable rec and tourism to help inform the strategies that are in the packet, but that conversation is going to continue and honing in on sort of like who needs to be there and who are the partners on the implementation and how do we build off of the work that's already happening and what's the additional funding, and sort of deep diving into much more detail than you see in the strategy packet. So yes, and that is just starting. We sort of needed the content in order to invite the partners to come to the table versus saying, hey, and Elaine can speak to this, it's like, come to the table, we just want to talk about some ideas. And now we have a start to sort of architecture on things we collectively want to move forward. And now we need our partners to step up and help us do that. So there is a question. So the question, can you go up a little bit? Because I can't scroll up. Oh, you can do, okay. Is there any, okay. Is there, how about the physical infrastructure? Can you explain a little bit more about the physical infrastructure foundational element? So I think the question is to explain the strategies, or what does physical infrastructure mean? In the strategic plan, it's focused on broadband. We sort of narrowed it down to broadband, wastewater, and water management systems as sort of the key foundational challenges in our region, and then there's a lot more information. This is like very cliff notes here, but that's trying to get at region-wide, and again, it'll differ from east side to west side, but how do we talk about economic development if we don't even have our basic infrastructure needs in place? And so how as a region do we start to get the funding, address this systemic major foundational element in order to unlock all these amazing things that we want to do with like Main Street and placemaking and all this other work, if we don't deal with some of these like systemic issues. So that's kind of what the physical infrastructure is focused on. Is there any prioritization how the elements initiatives are listed, or is it random? At this point, it is random. I wouldn't use the word random. It's very thoughtful, but we have not prioritized, except for what you're seeing is a prioritization based on pages and pages and pages of comments and feedback. So this is already a start to some prioritization through the writing team and consultants and SBC staff, and then bringing that back to you for another conversation today around prioritization. I think we go down. I'm just looking at the questions. One more, yeah. Okay, any other clarifying questions? I'm not seeing any more from the room. Okay. Okay, it appears that strategies around transportation and Main Street downtown revitalization have been removed. They are in there. If you look under housing and placemaking, the second strategy is initiate a region-wide Main Street and downtown revitalization campaign is there. And then transportation, there's not anything other than related to healthcare. There's a transportation piece, and but it might be in the tactics. Yes, Jill?
You got it. You answered it.
Okay. Okay. If you're not seeing something that you feel is really important, this is the time to speak to that. But more importantly, you need to go through the whole document, because it probably is in there in the tactics and in the detail. It's just not showing up. And if you feel like it needs to be more pronounced, because in your community you're seeing that, then this is the time. This is draft strategies. Okay, so if you, what we're going to do now is for the virtual friends, if you go to the next slide, I'm just going to explain what we're going to do in the next little time section here. So this is the really fun, exciting thing, which is not that far from the truth. It's not just a made up prompt of like pie in the sky. In some conceptual way, our strategic plan is going to the state and is being looked at by the governor's team to define their own strategies based on our strategies. So there is a roll up, so it's not inconceivable. And it's also, there have been conversations with the state on how they can help us in some of these very high level conversations regarding land tenure and other things where we need some help. So if you have 1 hour in the room with the governor, what are the top 5 priorities you would want to bring to his team's attention for the region that would unlock our economic prosperity in the region? Again, I will add, it doesn't, if it's not there, add that. You're going to be, if you go to the next slide, these are the directions, and you're going to spend about 30 minutes. We're going to do 4 groups. See, we're going to do 4 groups in this room, and Eric is going to send you an invite to the room you're invited to. You'll have a facilitator there. And these are the 3 things you're going to do is you're going to have some time to look at it. You're going to share your ideas. And then your group is going to whittle it down to the top 5 ideas that you want to move forward, come back together as a large group and share those and see where we land and have that conversation. Yes.
And I just want to mention one thing in terms of like it not being theoretical. That idea of if you had an hour in the room with the governor, I mean, it might start as a 15-minute meeting, but if it's really good, it becomes an hour. In 2019, I was working in the governor's office. Fresno did a sprint strategy session that looks similar to this, although they did it over 6 months. We scheduled 20 minutes with the governors during the wildfires and the PG&E shutoffs, all of that going on. He spent over an hour with a group, was incredibly impressed by a whole variety of strategies they put forward. They had 10. So it wasn't just 5, but they had 10 that they put forward. That led to putting $70 million in the budget in the 2020 budget. Then COVID happened, but that inspired the creation of the Community Economic Resilience Fund, which is now California Jobs First. So the origin, like that was an actual moment in time that happened. And then Fresno, with that money, was able to go out and get the Fresno region, able to get the largest grant from the Economic Development Administration in the kind of Build Back Better process to do a whole big food strategy. And so they're doing one of these just like you all are, but they've gotten some additional investment prior to that, in part because they've done some prioritization. So the prompt is possibly true that it could happen, but also think about it, I think, for you all as you want to be the model kind of rural transforming region with nature-based solutions, responding to climate change because of all this economic value you provide to the rest of the state. You don't have a lot of people, but you have these incredible economic opportunities that haven't been fully realized. So be able to tell that story and then point to some of these key strategies. There are other parts of California that have similarities. They haven't told their stories yet as well. And so this is kind of that moment to imagine how you would just group a few of these and really put it forward for someone that doesn't really fully understand all the attributes that this region has.
Okay, so for the in-room.
Can you put that big the slide back up there so we don't?
Yeah, you can go back to if you can go back to Lula. Did we lose to Lula? Okay, so this is a group I'm gonna have, so Aegon's gonna sit right here with John, with this 4 people, that your chair's on the other side. So basically you're sharing your ideas, and then Aegon's gonna have, the facilitator's gonna have a single piece of paper, jot down your ideas, and then you guys are gonna have a conversation around what are those top 5. Okay, so those are for our facilitator. So Aegon's gonna do these 4 right here. Or you.
Yeah, I was going to say virtually. Okay. Eric, are you guys good to go online?
Yes, I will be opening the room shortly. You should receive a prompt on your screen.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to mute the room.
So Mary, why don't you go on this side? Okay, so, yeah, you guys. Yeah. If you want, you can move that.
disruptive. Jump in here.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Okay, I'm gonna put the prompt here in the chat and then I'll screen share the strategies. Does everybody know each other? Should we do a quick round of intros? Maybe just name and role with the...
Hi, I'm Kathy Galino. I'm the Calaveras County Economic and Community Development Director. Hey, Supervisor Griffith, how are you?
Fine, Kathy. I'm obviously a supervisor from Alpine County.
I'm Laura Beardsley. I'm the executive director at White Bark Institute, and I'm planning on popping down to the in-person meeting, but I joined late, so I thought I would just not disrupt everything in the midst. So you may see me in and out.
Dave Edwards. I am the former chair of the Chamber of Commerce for Mariposa County and started the Mariposa Chamber Educational Bridge Foundation last year, technically 2 years ago now, as a means to kind of accomplish the things that I saw as being the problems that we needed to resolve in our community. And I'm happy to expand on that, but you know, I think that's going to be my answer, roughly speaking. You know, I put my effort where my mind is, and the reality is, from my perspective, my county and even the region around me, one of the biggest problems we have is not a real serious depth of opportunity for kids graduating from high school to get trades training. Not a lot of opportunity for staying nearby without having to move to another county or move to another area to be able to continue their education. And it's been an issue since way back in the day.
Thanks, Gabe. Doug, did you want to do a quick intro to our group here, if you can hear us? While we see if he comes off mute. Jill, SBC, ID Communications. I send your emails, so let me know if it gets annoying or if you want more of them. So Doug, if you want to unmute, feel free to pop in here and say hi. But just for the interest of time, because I feel like we always run short on time on these things. So this prompt is really if you had an hour with the governor, what are the top 5 things that you would want to bring to his attention about our region? And I'm happy to screen share and navigate through this. If you would like to go ahead and sorry, I got distracted by a Zoom notification there. If you'd like to go ahead and jump around to anything that you think is important. It's kind of challenging to circle and highlight in this virtual space, but yeah, I'll turn it over. I know you guys have lots of thoughts. This is not a shy group, so I'll turn it over to you guys, see what you think.
I want to add one thing that came up for me while Shauna and Egan were presenting. And it's that, like, behind that idea of like, what is one thing that's not potentially reflected in here that would the state potentially could help with a solution on, that would help us to hit some of these targets and foundational elements? And the thing that came up for me was insurance. Like, housing, really, housing is critical, right? We are all facing this challenge with housing, and it impacts our ability to have good jobs here. It impacts our ability to train workforce and keep workforce here. It impacts our ability to diversify our economic opportunities. It's pervasive across. And one of the things that keeps happening is that our access to affordable insurance is going away. So we have all these goals in here around like developing workforce housing, identifying lands to create workforce housing, all of that. But if people can't afford the insurance, or the developers can't afford to insure their properties, that, it seems like it's a catch point in a lot of areas that isn't really addressed here.
Mm-hmm. I am taking notes, by the way.
And that's the kind of thing I feel like maybe, I know it's a problem, it's pervasive across the state, right? And like, I mean, at least in Mammoth, State Farm just like dropped every apartment building, every single one. So like, or not, I think in Mono County, not just Mammoth, but like, that's the kind of thing that like, we can build all of this stuff, but if we can't insure it, or you have to get on Fair Plan to insure it, it's cost prohibitive.
Mm-hmm. Yep, good point.
I get tuned in on the insurance. We have a 34-unit apartment complex in Lone Pine, low-income housing, and the insurance was about $25,000 a year. We found a new provider at $10,000.
Oh,
but
great.
You know, it's like you don't know what's going to happen next year.
Right. Exactly.
You know, when you look at all of these linking factors, it starts with the environment. You know, right now we're back into the smoke cycle. The valleys are filled with smoke. So, you know, drastic climate changes are happening on this side of the valley, you know, and it's long term. Then you look at housing, same thing, it's long term. But it doesn't seem to be like at the core, all of these things are looked at once, and that's what this process, you know, should try to focus on is like a primary a primary assessment, land use, land agencies, ownership, housing, affordable housing, workforce housing, and then the environment, and at the same time, population density. You know, we have no people. It's you know, it's like you look at a major city and it supports itself. It has manufacturing, it has transportation, it has land. Those are the elements that we don't have. We have natural resources that we extract money from the people that come to this area, but at the same time, it's not sustainable. It doesn't support the economy. It support the agencies have high-paying jobs, but the sectors that we have, the tourism sector, is low income. They can't afford housing. We have people that come here to look for a job, and there's no, you know, the jobs will not pay for the rent. So it's this whole package of things that are tied together. And then, you know, we work with a lot of the agencies, and it's hard to really say that every agency is going to be in the room at the same time with the same set of policies and procedures. So you might deal with the Forest Service, you might deal with the Park Service, you might deal with BLM, you might deal with Water and Power, you might deal with the county, but there's not one package that has a core direction. I think that's a missing part. How do we get all these agencies on board to actually say, okay, we're going to support housing, we're going to support land release, we're going to support community development. Well, and then at the other end of the spectrum, we have community members that don't want any change. So I guess that's my rant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for bringing that back to what's missing here. I think, yeah. Go ahead.
One of the things that I think is missing, and probably only affects a small part of the community that's important. There are places at least on the east side, there are places that don't even have water and sewer connections.
Mm-hmm.
This is pretty basic. You know, we're talking about sustainable recreation and all this kind of economic development, but there's basic infrastructure. You know, I know it doesn't affect everybody, but I was shocked when I found out that there's some people that are living without indoor plumbing, without running water connections or sewer connections. And I understand there's even some communities in southeastern Inyo County that may not even have connected to the electrical grid.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty basic.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me that that's one of the things that, you know, I know it's not strictly economic development, but it is basic infrastructure that will really improve the lives of the people that live here.
Mm-hmm. And do you see that Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think, David, that's spot on, and I think it's, I think that, as I understand it, that's true on the reservations within the region as well, is that even.
That's what I was thinking of, the reservations.
Yeah,
It doesn't,
people within the Bishop Paiute
yeah,
reservation don't all have connections to Edison, for instance, and getting those connections hinder all kinds of things, so.
And just to get a little bit more granular on this feedback, I'm curious if we look at the physical infrastructure column here, if you see that need for basic infrastructure to be articulated in a different way, or is this a fourth bullet that goes here, or is it something that we expand? I don't know, modernize wastewater.
I guess maybe, oh, go ahead.
So sorry. Okay. I can't remember what I did, but when I submitted my comments, I put it in there.
Okay.
So in
great.
the tactic, I think it was in the tactics or strategy, somewhere in there, I put it in.
I was going to say, I thought I saw your comments come through on this. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll add to that. I think maybe, you know, the bucket around accelerate progress around broadband and utility. I think that's presuming a base level that already exists. And so if there's a way to just tweak that to identify that there's some places where that base point of just accelerating the last mile connection, there's more needed there. Like it's.
Yeah, that's good feedback.
I think that to Doug's point, maybe, I don't want to speak for you, Doug, but there are connections around all of these things. Like, I know we can't mark up and highlight and do all of that stuff, but like, you know, there's workforce identified within natural and working lands, and there's vocational development to encourage workforce in the, I can't read the title, but the one next to small business and entrepreneurship, right? Yeah, workforce, right? So like, I think that, you know, if you were to go into the governor's office, you would want to have that link, right? And that's kind of what we're trying to get at. And I think some of this process thus far has been, like if you're interested in workforce, you're working on workforce. If you're tied into landscapes and working lands, you've been working on the lands. So at least I only joined this whole process in like probably January. So bear with me if I misstate things here, but it seems like and maybe this is what we're trying to do, but that next step is to try to find those the linkages so that we can speak to that more broadly instead of as this separate thing. And I participated in the sustainable recreation piece that John set up through the CCRP last week. And I think, you know, as we look at diversification of economies and trying to make sure that our economies can be and our landscapes can be more resilient as the climate change and economic conditions can change, we have to think about sustainable recreation and tourism, but I think we often put so much focus in that area. Don't get mad at me, anybody, but we put so much focus in that area that we're not putting as much energy and attention into some of these other places that arguably need more attention because they're not already established. And if we could do more to, and I think one of these blocks speaks to it, but if we could do more to leverage the economic wins of sustainable recreation and tourism to help with like landscapes and clean energy and all of the ways that those places, those other buckets provide for that recreation economy,
Mm.
that would benefit us. And I think it says that diversify and leverage recreation economy with events, attractions, amenities. But I'd say, like, how do we get more investment from tourism into landscape restoration or entrepreneurship or childcare, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, could I chime in on, Laura's got a good point. I call tourism like an extractive industry, just like mining, or just like ranching, or just like anything else. It has an impact, a giant impact.
Yeah.
But if we just focus on tourism, it just keeps us in the same downward spiral. There's low-paying jobs. The resources have damage. Resource agencies don't have the money to do the restoration. And just this last week, we had a young lady that was going to be a ranger on the Whitney Trail. She helped haul down 50 pounds of human waste. And that was her third day on the job. She quit. So these are the kinds of conditions that I think from outside people don't see. Tourism is not, it's like this, it survives it, but at a basic level. We need to be looking way beyond tourism. We've been in the tourist business now for 37 years. You just struggle day to day. Look, like right now, I'm in the back of the kitchen because if we get an order, I got to cook. So it just makes no sense to keep talking about tourism as like our panacea. We've got to get out of that, that mantra.
Yeah. Kathy, you have your hand up.
Hi. So, a couple of thoughts, and I don't know exactly where they play in here, on specific things, but one of the things that was recently brought to my attention, and I'm working on a regional quote unquote training opportunity, is for our aviation industry. We have found that several of our fixed base operators, those are people that do avionics, do aircraft repair maintenance at our small airports, are struggling with, finding workforce. I've been working with Motherlode Job Training, and we're finding that it's not just unique to Calaveras County. It's actually not just unique to the Central Sierra or the Sierra region. There's great opportunity. These are good paying jobs. They're $30, $40, $50 an hour. There's no training opportunities. So I just want to kind of put that, I don't know where it goes in here. The other thing is the transportation piece.
Oops.
Not only have we lost our transportation for our seniors, we now have lost transportation for our students. One of our largest school districts has announced they're very close to receivership, and they will not be providing transportation for students next year. So I don't know if, again, is that unique to Calaveras County? Is that something that needs to be brought forth? Again, tying into education, transportation, aviation. And then the last thing, I don't know where this fits either, under workforce development, education. We have very few satellite centers for education. We've got Columbia College to our south, and that's pretty much it. I think I've tried in the past to set up satellite centers. And just, I don't know where that fits. That's my only thoughts.
I'm going to guess that all of these things fit under workforce development and education. And I think some things like expanding aviation industry workforce training opportunities, that is something I think we would consider more of a tactic, which aren't included on here. But I'll definitely bring these to the writing team and have them plug them in where needed. But quick time check. We're out of here at 10:55. We've got about 7 minutes. So keep these ideas coming. Gabe, any thoughts from you?
As I say, I think, going back to the original question, if I had an hour in a room with the governor, I would be banging on about licensing and certificate bearing programs. Basically anything for 16 and up, because I think there's this weird artificial limit that's being placed at 18. But again, it's one of those things. When I was in high school, if there had been a trades program that could have rescued me from the stuff that I was doing, I think my entire life would have turned out very differently. That being said, now I'm an advocate specifically for that because of the fact that I went through the tough stuff that I did. The ultimate sort of perspective on this is that we need heavy equipment operators. We need people who know how to build buildings. We need people who know how to do carpentry and electricians and plumbers. And we need to be able to add the word sustainable to all of those. And we need to be able to say, my HVAC technician knows how to do Energy Star efficient installations and can do, good stuff that fixes my problems without damaging the environment. We need more mechanics. We need more people who know how to manage, airplanes or manage fixed based operators. These are things that if you go into any one of these Sierra counties and just sort of ask, well, what's missing here, over and over and over again, people will say, man, I wish there was a thing. And that thing is almost always a private business. And that private business is almost always driven by skills or a talent that's missing, that hasn't been developed because there's no educational program in that community to do it. So the Chamber of Commerce backed me when I was stepping down from the Chamber of Commerce after 5 years of leadership there. They heard what I was going to go do, which was the Educational Bridge Foundation. And they heard the mission, and from their perspective, it's the perfect way to create more entrepreneurs, right? It's the way to get more people to start businesses. If you can get more people trained in more things, and they're not leaving the county, and you don't have brain drain, all of a sudden you're creating a pool of people who have knowledge and resources to be able to build businesses and start stuff. So that's where that all got backed, and that's the reason why the Chamber of Commerce backs financially the Educational Bridge Foundation. The only give me to them is that we're going to try and make sure that with any one of the programs that we bring in, whether it's skilled laborer or rocket surgeon, we're going to try and make sure that we're always keeping that foundation of teaching entrepreneurship, how to start a business, how to do accounting, how to do your own business management, all of that kind of stuff, I think is really what's missing. So we talk about all the rest of the things in here. Physical infrastructure, you need people who know how to build things, right? Small business and entrepreneurship, that's the Chamber of Commerce working with workforce development. Land use and tenure, you need to have people who are somewhat experts and knowledgeable about what's going on with the local regional governance and government management, dealing with companies and utilities, dealing with PG&E or SierraTel or whatever it may be, to try and figure out ways to get these big projects to happen. Every single one of the other things that we talk about, housing and placemaking, all of them are tied into this concept of increasing the knowledge base and the skill base of the region. Sustainable recreation and tourism, I think, is the only thing that we don't need to focus on because it exists. And every county that I know of around here is doing very intelligent, sensible stuff around tourism. They're trying to come up with low impact, healthy ways to boost tourism. And it really shouldn't be what we're focusing on, because that's already that's the sole driver of a lot of our economies anyway. It's fine to try and refine that and improve that. I'm simply saying, in terms of like targets, it is what it is. It has to be, because it's our backbone here. But in terms of changing the game, I don't know. Maybe boosting it, fixing it, helping it. Sure. But again, all of that stuff can be driven by greater education, because you need to have people who know about sustainable recreation, sustainable tourism, sustainable agriculture, sustainable farming, sustainable forestry.
Yeah, maybe just quickly, one thing that would be really helpful next time is give us this as a homework assignment. Because if I'm going to go in and talk to the government for 15 minutes, I need some time to think.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, and feel free to, maybe we could add a line to the form for our feedback form if this, add this as a prompt and be like, what is, aside from all this documentation and all these things we've written down and we've wordsmithed and all this stuff, like what are the nuts and bolts of it that don't need like all the fancy language around it when you get down to it at the end of the day. So if you do think on it more and want to keep talking about this, we can make a way to collect that info. Yep. Okay. Any last thoughts in the last 50 seconds? Thanks, everybody. Cool. See you back in the big room.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the thing, has to subsidize.
Hi, everyone. We're going to come back together as a big group. So let's just transition to all the small groups. I know it's hard to let go. It's a start to the conversation. So Erica, if everyone in the group can get back to their regular seats, because what we're going to do next is share out. So each facilitator, if you can be prepared to come over to the podium for those in the room and share out the top 5 big ideas that came out of your group. Jill is going to be doing a report out on the screen and sharing. So if you can be as succinct as possible and be sympathetic to the typer. But just hold on. We have one group that's trying. All right, let's start with the online team, the virtual group. So I'm going to call on Jill. Why don't you start? What were the top ideas that came out of your group?
Sorry, let me get off mute here. I was actually going to ask if one of my teammates here can type while I read my notes, because I don't know if I can type and be concise, but I can also get my group's notes here after the fact. But
So
Eric,
can someone type for Jill? Or Kara, can you do that? Is it? Kara can do that if you can give her access to that.
I'm there. I got it.
Eric's
Cool.
got it for you. Okay. Go ahead, Jill.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with the most controversial opinion I heard from my group, which was really thought out and thoughtful, and that is that sustainable recreation has to be in here, but it's already, because it is such a big driver in our region, but it's not where we need investment, because all of our communities, actually, this is one of the things that they're doing well. However, it needs to be a part of here. Experts need to be at the table. But it's not what my group would have prioritized as a number one place of investment if we only have so much we can talk to with the governor. My group really supported the idea of licensing and certificate programs and expanding trade schooling past the age of 18. There's a big need for tying in skill sets with private entrepreneurship. There's a big
Okay. Oh, sorry. Can you hold on? So Eric, I'm trying to list each idea by itself. So if you can just do like licensing and certificate program, trade schooling, and then go to the next, because other people might have the same. So remember the prompt, if you could put the prompt at the top, Eric, which is top priorities. What are our top? Yes. And so I appreciate, Jill, that you said what is not your priority, but I'd like to put that towards the bottom, if you don't mind, and just list what are the top priorities. And then we'll add that what your priorities are not down below, because we're going to have like 5 or 6 groups reporting out, and I just want to make it as easy as possible. And you can take Jill's name off.
Yeah, I'll do the grouping, Shauna, once I'm not talking.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on from that one, some specific tactics around that, like aviation industry, heavy equipment operators, etc. And then another thing that this group identified as a priority is strengthening the connections between these different strategy areas, and that it's our job as Sierra Jobs First to really articulate how things are connections, how there's overlap, how and make those connections for the state between the different areas. So it's an area of strengthening the layout of how we're presenting this. Also, insurance emerged as something that is a critical barrier to housing, to attracting high quality jobs, et cetera. That is something else folks in my group would bring to the governor and work through that issue.
To clarify, home insurance?
I think home insurance, but also other areas of other areas in which insurance presents a barrier.
Okay.
And it's a catch point for a lot of things. Okay. One last point here. A lot of talk around the basic infrastructure, and also that the infrastructure column at times assumes that there is already a base level, but we do have conditions in some of our communities that don't have any internet, don't have any sewer. And I think that the strategies are written in a way that assumes that there is a base level that needs to be improved, but there is maybe a greater need in some areas. So that's what I got for you. I'll clean up my notes here. Thanks, Eric. I'm going to jump in.
Thank you. So excellent summary. So Eric, as people are putting clarifications in the chat, just know that our team is capturing those and getting those over to Eric. Okay, so let's have Allison's group report out.
Thanks, Shauna. Okay, so we talked about the existing strategies and we didn't quite get it down to 5, but we came fairly close. And so if we had an hour in the room with the governor, first and foremost, we wanted to talk about the need to have a regional infrastructure improvement plan. And we kind of broadened it from physical infrastructure to include things such as childcare and other aspects under civic infrastructure. We talked about housing and really the need to partner with the federal government, with local governments, with different jurisdictions to really help create pathways for things like housing and to kind of reduce barriers. So that was kind of our number one thing we want to talk to the governor about.
Eric, can you put regional?
So it's kind of, Shauna, it's kind of like that number one strategy under physical infrastructure. Okay. We also talked about under land use and tenure. We talked again about like number one is that regional partnership piece. We also talked about the need to be a stronger advocate, which we also thought we could do as part of this regional collaboration and partnership piece. Under small business, strategy number 2 around to drive economic diversification, specifically around the carbon neutral growth sectors. We talked about under housing and placemaking, about again.
Actually, can you pause for a second, Allison?
Yep.
I just want to make sure our note taker is,
Yeah, sorry. I think having me go first was challenging for setup.
I think it's, we just want a list at this point. I don't think we need to organize everything perfectly. So if we just pause for a second and just make sure. So we got the regional infrastructure, and then there was something else that you just said, Allison.
Under small business. So strategy number 2.
Okay.
Around driving economic diversification. And specifically around the carbon neutral growth sectors. And then around housing and placemaking. Strategy number 2, which is the region-wide Main Street Downtown Revitalization Campaign.
Thank you.
As an economic driver.
Perfect note taking. Thank you. That's much better.
And then under community healthcare, we would like to talk to the governor about the need to upskill our local workforce to prevent folks from having to travel out of the area, for healthcare services. And I believe that is all of them. And folks in my small group, if I left anything out, please drop it in the chat box.
Okay, and just a process check-in, Jill, what we'll do after everyone puts their ideas up is we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we can organize all the notes and then come back and just look at them in totality. Okay, thanks, everyone. So let's go to Andrew.
Hi, so in Andrew's room, we really had consensus around the first and second strategies under community healthcare, which I believe are the ones that Allison just mentioned, or very close. We also agreed on the fifth under housing and placemaking, the investing in infrastructure and plans to help with housing and other types of projects. Also, the first under workforce development, expanding post-secondary opportunities, but there was also a lot of agreement that there was overlap between that and the second, and that we should see post-secondary opportunities and vocational and apprenticeship type stuff all at once in the same project.
Those are post-secondary programs, right?
Yes.
So
Thank you. And then finally, we had a little bit of debate. Our last one, we wanted to make it a natural and working land strategy, but we could not come to agreement on whether or not to make it the first or the third. There was some disagreement about whether or not we should prioritize the projects and funding for ecosystem improvement projects or developing the workforce stewardship for said projects.
And then we had, was Heather in another room?
I was. We kind of got to 4. We had a lot of alignment in our group. I think across the 4 things that we felt were most important. The first is physical infrastructure, both in making sure that it exists and then making sure that it's stable and making sure that it's future ready. So that includes things like grid, broadband, water, EV charging stations to make sure people can come visit and charge their cars and be able to get back home. That was kind of a theme that touched almost every foundational element was physical infrastructure. The next, and they wanted to pull this out, they felt it was important enough to pull out, is fire improvements, forest management, because again, if something happens in the forest, if there's a fire, it touches workforce, it touches housing, it touches business, it touches the grid, it touches everything. So that was our number 2, was regional fire improvements. Our number 3 was the idea of advocating as a region and formalizing regional advocacy, again, across all of the foundational elements, because we have a lot of smaller rural communities. They all kind of have the same concerns. Together, it becomes the advocacy power of a major metro if we can align across all and kind of share information and resources. And then our 4th was workforce development, specifically as it pertains to hands-on opportunities, apprenticeships. We have a lot of work that needs to be done in our region that's very hands-on and is taught quite well in that apprenticeship type of a scenario. So bolstering to make sure we have the people here who can do the work needed to make sure all these other things happen. And we kind of ran out of time at the end. So if anybody in my group wants to pop something in the chat that didn't get mentioned, but it felt like we had some good alignment around those things.
Okay. During the break, I'm hoping, Eric, you can go grab the comments that were missed from the facilitators in the chat, or the facilitators can just go in and add their comments right into the doc. Okay, so let's start. Is that all our online friends, all the groups? Yep.
It is.
Okay, great. Let's start with the team over there. I'm going to ask Elaine, if you don't mind just coming, you could do a report out here just so that the online, and then we'll do Erica, and then we'll do Aegon.
Good morning. So our group felt like first there's just a lot of interconnectedness between each of many of these strategies. And so a lot of these things are kind of necessary to support each other. The first strategy where there was alignment was under community healthcare and creating upskilling and upward mobility pathways for local workers. But it was felt like that should really be the priority strategy for workforce development across all of the target industries and not just isolated to healthcare. One of the observations that was really made thinking about workforce development as it relates to all these strategies is that training folks that alone will not create jobs. And so we do need to be looking at the opportunities that are really going to be job drivers in addition to workforce development support. So one of the things that was our second strategy that we focused on was driving economic diversification by attracting and supporting new industry clusters under small business and entrepreneurship, and then also marrying that to expanding access to capital for startups and existing businesses, because that's really necessary for that entrepreneurial support. Third, yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah, can you repeat that last one for me, Elaine?
Yeah, it was our second strategy priority was economic diversification for small businesses, which is the second strategy, but then also marrying that with access to capital. And training.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you. We had a long discussion about the importance of expanding access to childcare, which is in and of itself an opportunity for workforce development and for small businesses, but also will need to have support for access to capital and training and small business technical assistance. But it's something that's critical to supporting entering the workforce across all the target industries. And then we had a discussion about how really everything in our community is dependent on the relationship we have with the surrounding forest lands, and that it's an important priority for us to be developing a local workforce for forest stewardship under natural and working lands. And it was noted that there's real overlap between sustainable recreation, forestry, and clean energy, since having healthy forests is really critical for our sustainable recreation economy, but will also require investments in clean energy to be able to address biomass coming off of the forest. And then finally, we did 6. But the last one was also one of those critical issues that supports workforce development across all of the strategies, which was investing in identifying financial tools, capital, and capacity to support housing development. Thank you.
We have Erica come up. And I think when we have the break, organize the ideas by the sector, by the strategy titles if possible, and then if they don't fit, the overarching. I can help with that.
Okay, great. So our group had a great discussion. We combined a couple strategies just because there are synergies and some things are dependent on another. So the first thing that came up, of course, is housing, just because it's created so many barriers in workforce, small business development, economic development, all of the things. So housing is definitely something that there are things that we can do. So we talked a lot about things that our community can already do without funding, but then there are things that we need funding and we need the state support in some of these conversations. So secondly, was physical infrastructure. So our whole region has a crumbling physical infrastructure, and it's going to require dollars and partnership from the state in order to not just maintain the current residents, but also in preparation for any sort of growth. Let's see, number 3, we talked about food systems. So being able to feed our residents affordable, healthy produce. So that's a piece of our the sustainable ag and ranching strategy. And then last, number 4, we only got through 4, was the small business development and support of small businesses, which includes childcare. So this was one of those entangled issues that in order to start businesses and allow an environment for them to thrive, there has to be some sort of social infrastructure and programs and funding that can support their needs, and childcare was one of the call-outs. The other thing that I think one of the big things that we would bring up with the governor if we had the opportunity is the issue of affordable health care and just the cost of living in our region, just because so many of our jobs are low wage. And so the cost of things are a much higher percentage for rural residents than it is for the rest of California.
Thank you. And our last group, and then we'll take a short break, and we'll get the notes organized, and we'll come back to it.
Okay, great. So quickly, we started with a kind of overarching idea that we need to demonstrate the ecosystem services value of the mountains and the forests, and that would kind of be the opening salvo. It's not quantified, and the resources do not come to the upstream creators of the value to the downstream beneficiaries, but we would want to start as that as a framing point to understand about the region. So 5 strategies. 1, under land tenure, this isn't quite there, but the state should create a new shared stewardship agreement around engagement with the federal government and other public landowners. Big picture kind of framing to do a bunch of things, including identify the downstream beneficiaries, but to set up other people to work on that. That's 1. 2, we need innovative strategies for public finance to try to draw resources.
It's a new strategy.
Yeah, new strategy.
Yep, I got it.
So it could be under civic infrastructure, but to draw, tourism occupancy taxes, a 1% tax on downstream users, but innovative financing. We also talked about private equity innovative financing, which might be in the bonds, but let's just say there's a bucket for financing. 3, under workforce, this is a new strategy that's not there. Establish a new model to turn seasonal jobs into year-round jobs. And this is cross-cutting because it might be sustainable rec and forest stewardship and other components combining together. 4, also in workforce, it's really around the first one or the post-secondary, but something like every high school grad should have the opportunity to earn a post-secondary degree or certificate without leaving the region. Kind of combines the first and second. And then 5, last one, is under physical infrastructure to accelerate progress on the delivery and implementation of broadband. So very similar, a lot of other things of combining stuff.
Great, thanks. Okay, so that was a lot. Good job, everybody, in staying very high level. I hope that was exciting to think about. We're going to take just a 10-minute break. There's still hot coffee, lots of food, and then I'm going to work with Jill to organize, and then we'll have a quick wrap-up conversation on sort of what stood out from that, prepping our conversation with the governor, and then we have just a short section to finish up the meeting before lunch. Okay, so we'll see you back in 10 minutes. Hi, Jill.
Hi, should we just hop on the phone really quick?
Yeah, or I can just go into the,
yeah, but I'm on the whole thing.
yeah.
Do you need help, Jill?
We can't hear you, Shauna.
So if we can see the screen again, we'll just do a high level of our magic makers of taking all the notes. I'm not sure who's sharing the screen. Okay. We'll continue to keep cleaning this up, but is this the first page, Jill? Okay, so the prompt was, if we had an hour in the room with the governor's team, what are some things that we would highlight in our strategic plan as critical to our success for unlocking the potential of economic prosperity in our region? We had some broad themes that had to do with sort of how we frame and organize and communicate the information. Thank you for that feedback on. We will continue to strive to demonstrate the relationship between all these strategies and how they work together. Some strong feedback around some of those foundational elements. We need to be more clear about how those are cross-cutting across all of the strategies and serve all of the strategies, rather than stand around and being more clear on that, particularly with childcare and upskill, with the workforce and advocacy. So these are just sort of the broad themes. We also heard about framing things as the unique qualities and competitiveness of our region is based on those sort of ecosystem services, and how we are not just creating economic prosperity for our region, but trying to amplify the fact that we as a region support the rest of the state. And so, how do we commodify that, and how do we clarify that we are small and mighty, but we are critical to the success of the entire state's economic vitality as well. So next slide. Okay, then we started to move the conversations based on what you said into the existing system that we have in place. I would say pretty consistently, physical infrastructure is a critical priority in our region. We also heard quite a bit about small business and not only about direct support and investment in the businesses, but what do we do to create investments for in the conditions for entrepreneurship and our businesses to thrive. Housing and placemaking, critical, another critical area. Now, remember, we have 11 strategy areas, and even this conversation helps us understand sort of your thoughts on prioritization of those 11. So regional, physical infrastructure, small business, housing and placemaking, community healthcare. Next slide. Workforce development and education, heard a lot. Again, that's sort of more of a cross-cutting. So we need to make sure that as we're thinking about workforce development and training, that we're really making the case that efforts are in place to serve all of the sectors. Forest and natural lands, the land tenure was mentioned as a critical piece, but also sort of gets at that cross-cutting piece in the beginning, and then sustainable rec, just one group's opinion. Okay, so what are we going to do with this information? If you go to the next slide. As we've mentioned over and over and over again, we are in a constant refinement literally every single day of going back into the document. Today's conversation and the notes are absolutely going to be folded into the refinement that we're doing right now. And you'll have an opportunity to continue to comment on that and appreciate your deep dive into that conversation today. So next slide. So number one, please go in there to the document and read it and provide some level of comments. And hopefully today you leave with a greater understanding of what is in that document and the essence of it and how it kind of moves together. Feel free to reiterate what we talked about today. Next slide. Okay, just as a reminder, July 8th is when the comment period 1 closes, and then we're going to post the full draft strategic plan, which will, I promise you, take you much longer to read. So please mark your calendar for some fun reading there on July 25th. 2-week period. We'll post it again August 15th, and then the governing council will be asked at the next meeting, the virtual meeting, to vote on this. The vote is to move it forward to the state based on where we're at in the process. Okay, so we have 30 minutes till lunch, and Erica has some updates. Erica, you got to come back up because you're going to share so she's going to share a bit about the catalyst, and then we hopefully have time for a prompt about the collaborative, the Sierra Jobs First Collaborative.
Okay, great. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, what is coming after this strategic plan? We are looking forward to the catalyst phase. Right now, the two important things that we want to talk to everyone about are the two buckets, the 9 million allocated project bucket for exploratory and last mile projects. And then secondly, we're going to talk about the industry coordinator funding bucket from Catalyst. But first, so next steps in terms of how are we prepping for Catalyst projects moving forward. We are expecting the rollout process for this project ideas that we are turning into applications. Just taking a step forward, we are working on putting together technical assistance workshops for these projects. We've had a lot of ideas submitted that are not fully baked. A lot of them are missing things and they're not, or they might not qualify for Catalyst, or they're focused on a very, very small community in a 7-county region. So moving backwards, there's going to be 3 phases in preparation for these workshops before the RFP opens September 1st. So we are going to send out, well, actually our team is working on doing some matchmaking and putting together some contact lists. And so everyone will, if you submitted a project idea that qualifies for Catalyst dollars, you will receive an email sometime in July 8th to 12th during that week saying you've been matched. And we think that this is a good group of projects, ideas that were submitted that could make a more singular, robust project. And so it is going to be up to that group.
So you're drawing from the list for this matchmaking from all those ideas?
That's our starting point, yes. We know that there are definitely project ideas that have not been submitted yet.
Erica,
So
sorry,
please-
can you please repeat that question? Thank you.
Oh, so the question is that are we pulling this data from that project tracker? So we had, for the last almost a year now, we've had this document where people have submitted ideas for a later use, later is now. And so we are using that as data right now to group smaller projects to think through larger regional projects. However, the caveat, not everyone has submitted their project idea. And we've gotten a lot of questions of, is it too late? No, it's not too late. But please do it as soon as you can, just because it would be a shame to have an amazing idea come up in the last week of the RFP, and it would create a much more difficult process. So we are going to be making suggestions. We'll send out an email. Then you'll have the contact information, all the project ideas that were submitted that we think could go together. And then you'll have about a week or two to meet. And then we're going to send out a draft application. So the draft RFP, a budget template, some working docs that will be in a, not Google Docs. I think we're looking at Box or something a little bit more user-friendly. So you can work in those documents, and then our team can see where people are getting stuck. And so we can anticipate questions that are going to be coming up. So the idea is that we have workshops held on the West Slope and the East Slope. They're in person. I think we're going to categorize them by sector. And we want people to show up with a filled out draft application. So do not show up with a blank slate. So the idea is that we're going to be working through some of like some critical issues. So there might be a great idea and we've got, 5 people that have come together and they're like, okay, but our issue is we don't know who our co-applicant from a disinvested community is going to be. And we're stuck on this one funding aspect of the budget. So we're going to provide a team made up of our SBC internal, SBC partners, so like SCOG and Motherlode, our industry partners will be tapping into, and other very involved community partners to help with the technical assistance piece at those workshops. Even after the workshop, there's still time. So those are going to be held second week of August. So we have a hold right now for the 12th and the 15th for both slopes. So one of those 3 days, those workshops will be taking place, and we'll send all of this out via email, so you'll have those dates. And this RFP for the Catalyst projects will open on September 1st. It'll be open for 2 months, so it's not going to close until October 31st. And then our subcommittee, our project identification subcommittee, is going to meet and work through some of the criteria, weight the projects, put them into buckets, make suggestions for the council. And then, as we discussed earlier, in November, we have our in-person council meeting where there's going to be a pitch session. So those projects that are moving on to the next stage will be given notice, and you'll have time to put together a 10 to 15-minute presentation on the need to know facts for the council before they vote on December 6th. And that'll be a virtual meeting. So this is just on a high level, the draft process that we've laid out. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to read all of the words on the slide, but it is here. This is all information that we've talked about. We know it's been in the original SFPs. This is all language that's come from the state. These are just some examples of pre-development projects. So there's the analysis category, feasibility studies, market analysis. There's the development piece. So like site acquisitions and project designs, permitting. And then there's the research, finance mechanisms piece. And then partnerships. So drafting, negotiating, community benefit agreements, community workforce agreements. All of these things are examples of pre-development projects that would qualify for Catalyst. Next slide. Another one, so basic environmental infrastructure pre-development activities. We've had a lot of questions about infrastructure. We only have the language that we've been given. So if there's something that you're not quite sure about, please send us an email or come to office hours or the workshops, and let's talk through how this would look. Because Catalyst dollars are not supposed to fund infrastructure in the way that the implementation fund is intended to. So these are pre-development for infrastructure or last mile for infrastructure. Just something to keep in mind. Next slide. And then just another example, support costs for building and sustaining capacity of project leads and partners, such as, and then here's just a list of a few things that they've, investments in partner and local staff development, funding new or critical positions. So this is really that capacity building piece that we keep talking about. Is there capacity needed in order for an implementation project to be successful? Next slide. Okay. This is the same criteria that you saw back in April. So for those of you who came to North Lake in April for our strategy workshop, we did an exercise. You were given criteria and one project idea that came out of that tracker, and everyone worked through, did that project meet the criteria? So this is the base criteria from the state that we have to follow. Our project ID subcommittee has added some additional bullets that are not up here, just clarifying things and things that we would like to see. One example of something that will be added is support from local communities. So there will have to be a letter support from whatever the nearby community that it will be impacting, just to make sure that everybody is on board and aware of what's going on before the project rolls out. This is also on our website, and we will continue to resend this out if you have not seen it. Next slide, please. Okay, so the industry coordinator bucket. This is something that we've talked about a little bit, but now that it's coming up a little bit quicker, this is 1.5 million dedicated in our contract that is meant to go toward funding 5 positions or organizations, they say it loosely, that are working on each of the priority sectors identified by our region. So our 5 priority sectors are natural and working lands, sustainable recreation and tourism, sustainable ag and ranching, clean energy, and community health. So we will be releasing a RFP because SBC, as the convener, we are hiring for these positions. So we're hoping to release it. We're hoping the RFP will open July 15th to August 15th, so it'll be open for 30 days. We have to review it internally, so we'll need a couple weeks to do that. We would like our contracts to begin on September 1st. Once again, this is a draft process. We want to do it as soon as possible because we need the help of these industry coordinators to help us prioritize and implement strategies that are coming out and help on the projects and the technical assistance piece that is coming up in the catalyst phase. You have a question?
The mic. Okay, just to make sure I'm clear on this, who will be the employer in this instance?
So SBC will be the convener. So all 13 conveners are hiring for this. So every region, all 13 regions are hiring 5 industry coordinator positions through an RFP process.
Okay.
Erica, we have another question in the chat. Would you like me to read it to you?
I guess Aaron, to go, I guess I
But that turns it off.
we already have navigators right now, right? We have Kara, we have Magnolia, and then we also have industry partners. So these industry navigators would be specific to the industry work, but they would be employees of contracted to SBC, right? Unless it makes sense, to Erica's point, if your organization seems like it can do the industry sector work related to ag, then the contract would be with your organization to do that work. Those are the 2 options.
could apply for this. And I realize there's people online, so forgive me.
They're having the same question, actually.
Yeah, just, I mean, I think we might want to entertain the capacity building regionally, what that, I mean, is this a 24-month position, a 36-month position? All these issues that we're dealing with will be issues 10 years from now, or most of them will be. So how might we entertain the notion that we want to build 10-year-long capacity because hires are infrequent, particularly in these sort of cross-cutting type of scenarios, right? So it is not too early to start thinking what the world might look like after jobs first, and you know what it should look like in 36 months. That's a comment here. It's also a comment for the strategic plan. This is Aaron Wilshire from UC Cooperative Extension, by the way. So it's, I think also the things that stick out most in the strategic plan that I don't know, I'm sorry, I missed the morning. I don't know what the purpose for the top 5 was, but building governance capacity in order to be able to do the technical assistance, to do the convening, to do the strategic planning moving forward, seems like it should be on top of all that stuff. Infrastructure, housing, small business support, ecosystem services analysis, land tenure, yada, yada, yada. How do you do any of that without regional convening, planning capabilities? So anyway, that goes to this. And then just a comment if that's appropriate for the strategic plan content.
So you just framed up our next exercise.
I'm sorry?
You just framed up our next exercise, the next
Oh.
question that we will be posing to all of you. It's a
So-
great question, by the way.
Anyway, so not to take it off, but just, I guess, to get clarification, if entities would be eligible to apply to host these positions.
I would need a little bit more context around what do you mean by entity? So the idea is that these are 5 organizations or individuals in our region. So we're building capacity within our region and we're keeping the dollars in-house.
Would SCOG be, not to call out a land,
SCOG
but-
could be a potential entity.
Okay.
Yes.
Only have like 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
Like 5 minutes. 10 minutes.
Erica, I just wanted to call out, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to let you know, we do have some other questions trickling in to the chat. So I don't know if you wanted to address those now or after this next session.
Sure. Let me just go through the 3 questions that are here. And then I think this is the last slide. There might be
Yeah,
one more.
And then what I'm going to do for that next section is just share what the question is, and we're going to talk about it in future meetings.
Okay, do you want to do that for these 2?
No, you do
Okay,
those,
okay.
and then I'll just.
All right.
Be able to do this?
Yes. So one of the questions in the chat, will this strategy session influence the type of projects we want to focus the Catalyst funding? I assume it's possible that the priorities we just discussed could potentially be different from a large list of project ideas. For example, it appears an infrastructure plan is needed per today's feedback. So yes, the short answer is yes.
Yeah, so just real quick, I had the exact same question, and so if there is not, so just to clarify, if there's in the list that Erica mentioned, that the project ID is using as a starting place, if there's a key strategy that we want to move forward, and yet there's not a project yet that exists, SBC will sort of proactively start to put together sort of who would be a good group to start to work on that. So we make sure that we have projects in our ID tracker that are starting to address and move our strategies forward, because they may not be there yet, because when the projects came in, nobody had the strategic plan yet, right? And so there is a relationship between the 2.
And then Andrew's question, would that person be directly employed through SBC or is it an independent contract? They left it in the SFP. It could be either or. And then lastly, can you clarify what infrastructure projects would qualify for Catalyst? You said last mile. Yes, so pre-development activities and last mile activities, Anna. And the infrastructure, to our knowledge, is all infrastructure needed except for broadband and housing, because those are the two things that the state told us that we could not physically fund the construction of, because there's already existing dollars from the state for that. Okay. So just to wrap up on this, it's a 2-year contract or position. So the funding is sustainable for 2 years. It's $150 a year, I believe. So it's 300 total per 5 if you break it out. So when you divide 1.5 by 5 positions by 2 years, it's a lot, and it's also not a lot at the same time, depending on the organization, how many positions, we're trying to fund, what we're doing, so forth.
Includes healthcare?
Yes. Yeah, community health is one of our sectors, so we'll need a sector coordinator role or entity.
Yes, it does.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay.
You want me to do this just so I can go fast?
Sure.
Okay. Just real quickly, we are starting to sunset, but we're at the tail end of the strategic plan, and you are about to have a lot of information and a focus on Catalyst. It's just SBC needed to wait till that contract was signed before they could really dive in and start to spend staff time on that. So just know that we're in the end, like on the end of our strategic plan, and that will be a tool to use for the Catalyst, and you're going to get a lot more information, a lot more conversations. So we wanted to have time for this, but we don't have time for this. So what I'm going to do here is just give you the question and know that at future meetings, we're going to have this conversation, which is exactly what Aaron just brought up, which is how do we, if you go to the next slide, how can the Sierra Jobs First Collaborative best support the region and move strategies forward? So that includes the next phase, which could or could not be the Sierra Jobs First Collaborative. But over the next few months, we've had our heads down doing a very fast, intense planning process, and now we're moving into Catalyst. But along that way, there's going to be governing council conversations around what is the future of our regional convening and collaboration beyond Sierra Jobs First. We kind of had to have the content to know what the work was that we needed to all organize around and what our actions were. And now we can go back and look at it and say, okay, so what governance structure do we need regionally? How do we need to convene? What's the role of SBC and the role of this particular initiative right now? And then what's our plan in the future? So to be continued, but we wanted just to express that that is a critical conversation that we're aware of, and we will continue to bring that up to all of you over the next few months to have that conversation. I think with that, I think we're done now. Go to the next steps. Just please, I'm going to reiterate it again. Please stay engaged in sharing out to your base the opportunity to review these documents for our strategies. And yourself, absolutely want all the governing council to make sure that they're getting in there and they're providing comment and really know this. You are the stewards of the strategic plan. You're the governing structure. You're the governing body that's going to vote on this. So you absolutely, your homework is to read it and reflect and respond. And thank you for your time. And then I also, you might want to just say Erica's here.
Sorry, Magnolia, we lost audio on the room. I'm not sure what happened. No.
No?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, it's okay because we were referring to the room here. We do have a taco truck waiting outside for lunch, and then the SBC team will be sticking around this room for the next hour to answer any questions. Thank you everybody online and also to everybody that's here today in person and everybody, especially the travel from the west side to attend this meeting in person.
Sometimes there's not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Can I ask a favor?
Yeah.
Could we go back to the slide that had the summary?
Jill, can you go back to the, I'm not sure John wants to see the
One
first
other
slide.
clarifying question.
Yes.
Comments are due July 8th?
Correct, 5
End of the
PM.
day?
Yes.
5 PM.
5 PM.
Okay, it's a
Close.
little unclear, but 5 PM.
Yeah,
Okay.
standard. Yeah, well, we can add that, but it's,
Is it, there's something that says we'll be reviewing on the 8th, so people are asking me, does that mean I gotta have?
yeah, we'll make that more clear, Jill. That's the point. Just July, public comment period ends,
Just close of
close of
business.
business on July 8th. We'll just add that detail.
It was that slide that had the summary of
Change dates.
of the breakouts from today.
Oh, Jill, can you put up all of the summary of everyone's feedback, your summary slides of the notes? Yeah. There's 3 slides though, John.
It was the first one.
Yeah, that's just the,
Maybe, yeah, sorry, go back.
go
to the-
back, go back. So the meeting's over, but I would just say for any of the meeting facilitators, before you leave, can you all just check, come over to my computer and just check that your notes got
you,
captured
that's
correctly in the summary. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey. Hi, how are you?
Good, how's it going?
It's going
A lot of
good.
processing.
All right. Yeah.
But then it's